Welcome to Devotionary, where we make the Bible accessible and applicable. Sadly, in our modern-day context, saviors are like opinions. We all have one. And in some cases, we have saviors for virtually every circumstance and day of the week. But in Isaiah chapter 43, verses 1 through 17, God is going to remind His chosen people that they were to have no other saviors but Him. He was the one who had called them and set them apart as His own. He had showered them with His grace and mercy, redeeming them from slavery in Egypt and providing them with a land they could call their own, a land flowing with milk and honey. In other words, overflowing with natural resources and filled with the presence of God. But over the years, the people of Judah had decided to seek out their own saviors in the form of false gods, military alliances with pagan nations, and an assortment of not-so-godly kings and leaders. But when all was said and done, God wanted them to understand that He was their only Savior, and He had promised to one day send His Son as the servant Savior, who would rescue and redeem them once again. This time, not out of physical slavery in Egypt, but out of spiritual slavery to sin and death. This chapter brings a powerful message of assurance and comfort to the people of God. In spite of their spiritual blindness and deafness, He's going to save them. The very one who called them and ransomed them from slavery in Egypt is going to rescue them once again. Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by my name. You are mine. Isaiah 43, verse 1. They belonged to God, and as His possession, they were under His divine protection. But that didn't mean they were going to escape the punishment that they deserved. God was still going to bring His hand of discipline upon them, but He would never abandon them. When you go through deep waters, I will be with you. When you go through rivers of difficulty, you will not drown. When you walk through the fire of oppression, you will not be burned up. The flames will not consume you. Isaiah 43, verse 2. This may have come across as less than good news to the people of Judah. They would have preferred immediate deliverance and a guarantee of no difficulties whatsoever. But God could not and would not disregard their sins against Him. He is a righteous and holy God who is obligated by His own character to deal justly with sin. But He is also the gracious, covenant-keeping God who never fails to fulfill each and every promise He has made to His people. Generations earlier, God had told Abraham, the father of the Hebrew people, that his descendants would end up as slaves in a foreign country. But He also promised Abraham that He would redeem them and return them to the land of Canaan. You can be sure that your descendants will be strangers in a foreign land, where they will be oppressed as slaves for 400 years. But I will punish the nation that enslaves them, and in the end they will come away with great wealth. As for you, you will die in peace and be buried at a ripe old age. After 4 generations, your descendants will return to this land. Genesis 15, verses 13 through 15. When God finally rescued the people of Israel, and they were standing on the brink of the land of promise, God had given a sobering message to Moses, their leader. You are about to die and join your ancestors. After you are gone, these people will begin to worship foreign gods, the gods of the land where they are going. They will abandon me and break my covenant that I have made with them. Then my anger will blaze forth against them. I will abandon them, hiding my face from them, and they will be devoured. Terrible trouble will come down on them, and on that day they will say, "These disasters have come down on us because God is no longer among us." At that time I will hide my face from them on account of all the evil they commit by worshiping other gods. Deuteronomy 31, verses 16 through 18. After 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, a divine punishment for their refusal to enter the land, the first time they arrived at its borders, God had announced that they would still prove rebellious. And the book of Isaiah has provided ample proof of that rebellion. And the truly amazing thing about this situation in which the people of Judah find themselves is that they had failed to recognize all that God had done for them. Others were given in exchange for you. I traded their lives for yours because you are precious to me. You are honored and I love you. Isaiah 43, verse 4. This verse speaks of the substitutionary atonement that was a major part of the Jewish sacrificial system. God ransomed the people through the death of another. In Egypt, God had sacrificed the lives of all the firstborn of Egypt in order to purchase the freedom of the people of Israel. At midnight tonight I will pass through the heart of Egypt. All the firstborn sons will die in every family in Egypt, from the oldest son of Pharaoh who sits on his throne to the oldest son of his lowliest servant girl who grinds the flour. Even the firstborn of all the livestock will die. Then a loud wail will rise throughout the land of Egypt, a wail like no one has heard before or will ever hear again. But among the Israelites it will be so peaceful that not even a dog will bark. Then you will know that the Lord makes a distinction between the Egyptians and the Israelites. All the officials of Egypt will run to me and fall to the ground before me. Please leave, they will beg. Hurry and take all your followers with you. Only then will I go. Exodus 11, verses 5 through 8. God's redemption of the people of Israel from their slavery in Egypt had required a sacrifice, and it was because of the deaths of all the firstborn in Egypt that Pharaoh had finally relented and released the people of Israel. God is reminding his people that he has the power to redeem. Even though they face defeat at the hands of the Babylonians, God is able to rescue and restore them, so they have no reason to fear. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. I will gather you and your children from east and west. I will say to the north and south, bring my sons and daughters back to Israel from the distant corners of the earth. Isaiah 43, verses 5 through 6. Once again, God is promising to bring his people back from slavery. There is no distance too great or pagan nation too powerful to prevent God from keeping his covenant promise. Returning to the imagery of a courtroom, God calls on the nations of the world to come before him and testify whether their idols can match his ability to predict the future and bring it about. Gather the nations together, assemble the peoples of the world. Which of their idols has ever foretold such things? Which can predict what will happen tomorrow? Where are the witnesses of such predictions? Who can verify that they spoke the truth? Isaiah 43, verse 9. This little vignette is intended to remind the people of Judah that their God is incomparable and without equal. And if anybody should have understood that reality, it was the chosen people of God Almighty. You are my servant. You have been chosen to know me, believe in me, and understand that I alone am God. There is no other God. There never has been, and there never will be. Isaiah 43, verse 10. There is no other God. And as verse 11 states, there is no other Savior. God alone was going to be the one to rescue and redeem the people of Judah. They could turn to Egypt and put their hopes in one of their false gods, but they would only end up disappointed. Their hope had to rest in God alone. And God reminds them that you are witnesses that I am the only God. Isaiah 43, verse 12. They had seen God work time and time again. Their ancestors had been rescued from slavery in Egypt. In accomplishing his rescue of them, God had defeated all the false gods of the Egyptians. And when the people of God had begun their conquest of the land of Canaan, God had given them victory after victory over the nations living in the land, proving himself greater than the false gods of their enemies. And God closes his address to his people with the reassuring words, "From eternity to eternity, I am God. No one can snatch anyone out of my hand. No one can undo what I have done." Isaiah 43, verse 13. Yes, the future appeared bleak. God had foretold the coming invasion of the Babylonians and the fall of Jerusalem. But he was God, and he had a plan. Their defeat and deportation would be followed by his redemption and rescue. He had done it before, and he could do it again. He had returned the people to the land after 400 years of captivity in Egypt, and he would return them to the land after 70 years of captivity in Babylon. They were his possession, and no one could snatch them from his hand. He was in control. He was sovereign over all. And he wanted his people to know that they had no other Savior but him.